Hello and welcome to the Recursion Cafe, where we play games from the discard pile. In today's game of Unmatched, we have Paul on the left and Ema on the right. Paul is playing Bigfoot, one of the big three. He is a melee fighter with 3 movement and 16 health. His sidekick has 6 health and is also melee. At the end of the turn, if no one can see him, he gets to draw a card. So he's just kind of playing to that urban legend kind of deal. Ema is piloting the Genie, a solo fighter with 3 movement, also ranged, and 16 health as well. His ability is called Infinite Power. At the start of his turn, he may discard a card to gain an action for big, explosive combo turns. And so we're fighting on King Solomon's Mine. I'll be honest, it's not a map I'm particularly familiar with, but I know that it has a fair amount of tunnels, and that's very handy in escaping a ranged fighter, but also handy for escaping pins if Bigfoot and Jackalope manage to get Genie into a corner of some sort. I reckon this will be quite a tough matchup for the Genie, just because his values aren't very high. Even when boosted by the wishes, they're still only at 4, and the majority of Bigfoot's defenses are around about 3 or 4. So punching through to do damage to Bigfoot is going to be quite difficult. Paul starts his first action with Jackalope Horns for an auto 2 damage as the Jackalope rams his horns into the Genie from 5 spaces away. It's a good start, and it puts less pressure on Paul to keep the Jackalope alive, because that's the primary use of the Jackalope, apart from, blocks and such. However, Bigfoot's deck does have a lot of any cards, so the Jackalope is still pretty dangerous. Here's a follow-up attack by the Jackalope. It's a hoax into a wishing for more wishes, so everyone gets some card draw. Only 1 damage goes through. And notably, Bigfoot is sat far away outside of Genie's zone, and so gets a free card draw at the end of his turn as well. And Jackalope gets to sit back. So very aggressive opening from Paul there, but with all of the card draw flying around, that does make sense. And he even got a bonus one from Genie's card ability. So at this point, Genie is a couple of cards up. He will discard 1 to gain an action and will maneuver. The I Grant You Death card is a little bit less useful due to all the movement effects in Bigfoot's deck. And so here is a offensive feint into Adjust Your Imagination. So everyone cancels everyone and no damage is done. It's a good reminder that if ever you wonder why Bigfoot is in the top 3, having 5 cancels is a good start. Here is the third action attack, which is an I've made Sultans out of less into a defensive momentous shift. So no damage goes through, but Ema will get to look at Paul's hand and discard a card of his choice. And so I think he does show the camera here. It is a Just Your Imagination, a momentous shift, and a big log, a 6. And he of course discards the 6, leaving a versatile and a defensive cancel in hand. I think, all of them were pretty good to throw out, but not having to worry about one of the big 6 attacks is pretty good, especially since Genie's defenses aren't that great overall. So Paul will simply double maneuver and just kind of stay at range, and he gets his free card draw if he wishes. And he's just playing the waiting game because Ema kind of has to come to him. Genie will kind of more often than not burn out quicker than Bigfoot. And because of the value differentials in their cards, the onus is on Genie to make it happen, because Bigfoot can just kind of sit there and only swing when he wants to. So there is no parlor trick into a regroup, which makes the regroup stronger. So the regroup would have won the combat anyway, but it will win the combat even more so, and Paul will draw 2 cards. So, I mean, potentially there's a world where the Genie tries to force Bigfoot into exhaustion, but firstly he'd have to survive that long, and secondly he'd have to find a way around all of his own self-draw tricks. So I'm not sure that's the best plan. Here we go. Paul will play another Jackalope Horns and just deal 2 more auto damage to Genie. So that's 2 out of 3 down, leaving Jackalope next to the Genie and leaving Bigfoot far away, blocking one of the tunnels. So it's kind of, Paul is going for the Jackalope is my Pokemon approach and just hurling the Jackalope across the map at Genie and just kind of to deal with it. Here's a be careful what you wish for into a skirmish. So again, 4 value attack, I think the biggest value in Genie's deck, and just a regular any skirmish will cancel it, because the values in Bigfoot's deck are kind of ridiculous sometimes, if you look at the whole thing put together. So both fighters move away. And so far, Bigfoot is untouched, and as is the Jackalope, and Genie has taken 5 damage, so it is not looking great so far. However, if anyone can pull off a win out of this, it's probably going to be Ema. He's one of the more competitive players in our group, And so if there is a window, he will find it. So Genie will think about dancing around. Given how fast Genie runs out of fuel, it's probably prudent to go straight for Bigfoot, especially since the jackalope has used 2 of his horns already. Here is a no power trick into a just your imagination, so no damage done there. A solid, almost perfect defense card there. And yeah, Genie's really gonna have some trouble punching any sort of damage through. Paul will take a maneuver, and Bigfoot stays at range, stays back. There's no reason to step in at this point, and then Jackalope will attack. Jackalope's still on full, so Genie's gonna have a time trying to get him down to 0 anyway. It's a momentous shift into a back in the lamp. So Genie goes up 4 health, then goes down 5 health. Net 1 damage. He's down to 10, and Bigfoot and his body are just still shiny and new. We haven't seen any of the 3 wishes yet, but to be fair, it's quite hard to get Bigfoot down on hand size given his free draw ability and the fact that he's able to just kind of sit out of range with 3 move and deploy the jackalope instead. Here's an imprisoned wrath into a feint. Finally, 1 damage through into the jackalope. The effect is cancelled, but hey, that value though. And then Genie steps back into the corner, ready to jump through one of the portals. Jackalope will follow on and keep on attacking. So Paul maybe has decided that putting pressure on Genie is the best idea because his defenses aren't usually that good, and the more cards he can burn out of hand, the better. It's a regroup into an I've made sultans out of less, so good defense. And Ema will get to pick a card out of Paul's hand before the regroup draws a card. Here we have 3 full value attack cards, a feint, and a crash through the trees. So only 1 defensive option there. I reckon the feint is probably a good call. That being said, having some savageries and such in hand is not great for Genie, but it is good to know that that's what Bigfoot's capable of. So then the regroup draws a card, and then Bigfoot's ability draws a card, and he is back to 6 cards in hand. Yeah, you can see why the holy trifecta of loads of cancels, high values, and automatic card draw is very, very strong, and that's why Bigfoot has always been a dominant force in the competitive side of this game. So Genie steps in and tries to get away from the jackalope. Will he take a shot? No, he will sit there at 7 cards. Essentially, he's just digging for those wishes. So here's a boosted maneuver by the jackalope. Again, he has so many cards, he doesn't really feel the need to hold on to all of them. To disengage into a prisoner's torment. So 3 damage goes through, but that does draw the Genie 3 cards. This might be the explosive turn that Ema was looking for. Hopefully some of the wishes were drawn. That being said, Bigfoot's still going to be on something like 6 or 7 cards in hand by the end of the turn, which is just rough, to be honest. I'm pretty sure Bigfoot hasn't actually attacked this game. He's just kind of sat there and drawn cards. That's been his whole thing. So here's another I Grant You Death pitch to gain another action. So that's 3 actions for the Genie. That first one is a maneuver. He's got a lot of cards in hand, so he's going to have to spend some of them. Here's an attack. I can't tell who it is aimed at, but it does not really matter. It's a 4 into a 4, and again, no damage done. Careful what you wish for does have a clause to say if you lost it, you can deal a damage to an adjacent fighter, but of course, Paul is not going to be putting his fighters adjacent to the Genie, unless he wants to be really, really aggressive, which would be, quite cool to be honest, but it's not really necessary. So Bigfoot will dance away out of sight. And Ema will attack again, and it's a I Grant You Death into another hoax. So that was technically a good bait. It is a 2 value pulling out a 4 value defense, but to be honest, almost all of Bigfoot's cards are that high anyway, so it didn't really do anything. So here we go, we pass on over to Paul, who just kind of sits around. Oh, is Bigfoot actually going to get stuck into the fight? No, he's just gonna go back. It doesn't really matter. He's gonna sit there and wait this game out. Which, granted, isn't that exciting, but I think is just how you win this game as Bigfoot. To be honest, he's taken a grand total of 1 damage, and that's been on his sidekick. So yeah, not ideal for the Genie. However, we haven't seen any of the wishes just yet, so still all to play for really. It's a feint into a feint. So yeah, they really like their cancel offs today. That being said, we've not really seen any of the logs either. We've seen 1 that was discarded, but the other 2 are still hanging around, and they will hurt through Genie's defenses. So here's another attack by the Jackalope. Bigfoot just kind of watching on. It is a regroup into a Prisoner's Torment, the ultimate counter to Prisoner's Torment. So that means Paul will get to draw a card and Ema will not, which is very sad. And then I think Paul declines the zone draw. So Ema will maneuver and try and maneuver his way around to get a shot, to line up a shot onto Bigfoot. And here it is. It's undefended, it's a feint. So that was a weird one. So an offensive feint, which wasn't really ever going to do any damage unless it was into a regroup. Maybe trying to pull a movement effect, or maybe just the only card that Ema wanted to attack with. But also no defense from Paul, which is quite telling. But we saw his hand earlier and it was quite low on defenses anyway. So maybe he's just kind of run out of steam there. But we know he still has a bunch of attack cards, and so it might just be best to lean into that with the Jackalope while Bigfoot tries desperately to draw for more defenses. So here's an attack by the Jackalope, and it's a disengage into a wishing for more wishes. 1 damage goes through, Jackalope dances away, and everyone draws some cards. So both decks are starting to look pretty thin. Ema doing a deck count there, and Ema's done 2 damage in total to Bigfoot. He still has 14 left. If he manages to go through Paul's hand and rid it of all the defenses, then maybe there's a shot, but 14 is still incredibly high. And we know that Genie's attack values aren't that high unless he spends a wish kind of activation on it. Here's a discard of the back of the lap to gain 3 actions. This might be it, folks. So, what will it be? First action, 3 wishes, which is not really an action. So still 3 actions left. Ema will draw the rest of his deck, which is actually only 4 cards, so he'll spend a card to deal himself 2 damage and draw 4 cards. He's down to 4 health against 14 and 5. But he's still at 3 actions and he's got the rest of his deck left in his hand, so we know all the wishes are there. But what can he do with them? He can't really discard meaningfully all of Paul's cards because he'll hold onto defenses. So here is a I am freed into the Jackalope to deal 3 damage, then place himself in an empty space to deal a damage to each adjacent fighter, which presumably will be Bigfoot, which is a pretty smart way of getting around the need to maneuver. So I like that, that's great. There's 1 damage into Bigfoot. All right, 13 left. Another 3 wishes, which turns all of his values into 4s, trying to just punch that damage through. Again, the discard is not really worth it, and of course he can't draw right now, so that's more or less the only option. Is he going to play the third 3 wishes? I suppose he could if he is worried about loads of defenses in hand, but I don't think Paul would discard them. So here's another undefended attack. It is a 4 value I am freed, which allows another teleport and another 1 damage. So that's 4 damage through and then 1 more. So Bigfoot's down to 8. However, Ema only has 1 more action left. So here's an attack, and there's a defense card. So it's a your wish is my command into a skirmish. The skirmish does win the combat, which means Bigfoot is able to move away, or one of the fighters is able to move. And then your wish is my command allows for an action game, but Ema chooses not to. And then Bigfoot swings back, and to no one's surprise, it's a big 6. And Ema draws, takes 3 damage, is still alive on 1, and then has to draw 3 cards, and then just dies. So there it is, guys. That's game. Ema had very few cards left, and Paul was left with just a handful of attack cards and not much left in the deck. So Ema did pretty well, got Bigfoot down to 8, got him down to half. But given that he spent most of the game being untouched, yeah, I think we can safely chalk that up to a pretty one-sided matchup between the Bigfoot and Genie. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. If you want to support the channel, you can follow the link in the description below. See you next time.